Hey, Bay Community, another Wellness Wednesday. This week, we're going to talk about compassion and resilience, and I am going to let someone else do the talking for once. This was a great video that I watched, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
Hello, welcome to the WISE Wisconsin Winter Series from the Lifespan program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. My name is Heather Quackenboss from La Crosse County, and I will be talking today about compassion resilience. So when we think about compassion, we think maybe about being kind. Maybe some of us think it's being nice. A lot of us think of, well, it's empathy or putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Now, if we have been by ourselves a little more often in the pandemic, if we are caregiving someone, and caregiving might be being a parent or being a daughter or being a spouse of someone who maybe needs a little extra help, we might be giving a lot of compassion. And sometimes we start getting tired. And what we're really going to look at today is compassion resilience. Now, does that mean pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just keep going? No, it does not. What compassion resilience is the power to return to a position of empathy, strength, and hope, especially after the daily experience and all of the challenges that we or the folks that we love face. It requires us to be able to find optimism in an imperfect world. When we opened this session up the other day before we started recording, we were talking about how my daughter made a cake that night. And I had just texted her like, oh, I'm so hungry for cake. And she really wanted to do something for me. So she made the cake. And when I took a bite of the cake, it had some eggshell in it. And there was an amazing reframe by another person in the group that said, at least it wasn't a hair. And sometimes when we look at compassion resilience and try to find optimism in an imperfect world, it's not going to be necessarily a perfect swap for happiness. It's really finding the good and beneficial moments that we can. So self-compassion really does go along with compassion resilience. That is self-kindness, being kind to ourselves instead of critical. Think of the last time that you messed something up or made a mistake. What was the first thing in your head that you said to yourself? I'm going to guess if you're like me, it wasn't something too nice. It's like, Heather, you messed that up. Or I can't believe you did that. We have an amazing self-critical voice, and it takes a lot of practice to try to reframe something or treat it with kindness, like, oh, well, I made a mistake. I'm going to learn from this. Or, it's all right. We can move on. Another part of self-compassion is having common humanity, knowing that everyone suffers. We are not perfect. No one is perfect. We're not alone. Every single person is imperfect. And so knowing that really can help us with self-compassion. And then finally, mindfulness. Not necessarily when we think of mindfulness, sometimes we think of meditation or yoga. Mindfulness really is noticing that present moment, noticing if we're struggling, feeling it. Instead of being reactive or trying to avoid it, how do we feel it? How do we sit with that? And without maybe self-judgment or overreaction. So thinking about it, when you feel like you've fallen short or made a mistake, how do you practice self-compassion? Now, honestly, I think a lot of us are probably a little bit tired and exhausted. If we are caretaking, if we are taking care of ourselves, if it is February in Wisconsin in the winter, we might be getting a little bit fatigued. This here is the compassion fatigue path. Now, all of this information comes from Rogers in Health and the WISE program. It's the Compassion Resilience Toolkit. So a lot of this information is very well developed and researched, and also developed in a fun way so we can really understand it. And hence we see here, well, in the corner, our favorite grumpy cat, right? So if we start with irritability, Sometimes when we're taking care of other people, taking care of ourselves, getting everything done, or just doing our daily grind, getting through our day, doing our schedule, doing what we have to do, sometimes we get a little irritable. Sometimes we get cranky. And it's not just because we're hungry and not taking care of ourselves. It's because we're just done. Think of when you drive. If you drive and there's someone who does something that you wouldn't do, maybe they didn't put a turn signal on, maybe they, turned out in front of you, maybe they hit the brakes, they did something. Some of us, myself included, might say a few words, might get a little bit angry. Honestly, is that person meaning to try to harm you? Probably not. When we get irritable, though, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If we go down the circle to the withdrawal, the cat's sleeping, sometimes we do get so exhausted that we just completely check out. We might go through our day doing everything, just running through the motions, but we're really tired with it. And we might, do a task and not even remember it when we get done. We're like, wait a minute, how'd that happen? Because we're not paying attention. Which can lead us down there to zombie cat, where, whoa, there's so much going on and all of the things are coming at me and I'm not sure what we're doing and I'm just trying to hang on for dear life here and go with the flow. Up at the top, there's the zealot, the cat with all the kittens. This is that period in the compassion fatigue path where we are going to change the world. We are going to do all of the things. We are going to be the best caregiver. We're going to be the best parent. We're going to be the best daughter, son, whatever we think we're supposed to be, we're going to be the best one. And we go all in. We jump into that deep end of the pool without even trying to go through that shallow end first. We just dive right in. And we've all been there too, right? Now, this path doesn't go necessarily in a circle. Frankly, on any given day, we might jump from all four of these. Just bing, bada, boom, right? And that's normal. It is normal. Sometimes we start the morning, we're like, okay, I'm going to get this day. I'm going to do everything I need to do. And then we're like, whoa, there's way too much to do. And we go right down to zombie cat. And then we think, oof, I just can't do this. And maybe we get over to the withdrawal. And then maybe we get back to zealot. Oh, I have to do this. And then something doesn't work and we go to irritable. We bounce and that happens. Where we end up, though, is to that unwell versus renewal. We either tend to burn out or we figure out, okay, how can I take care of myself and develop some compassion resilience? So we're going to look at a couple things today that might resonate with you and you can take and learn and practice. And some things that you're like, that sounds nice and I'm not going to do that because it doesn't fit me. Both of those are absolutely fine. So what's one of the first things we can really do to look at our self-compassion is frankly knowing that we're not perfect. And all of the people that we love and work with and deal with every day, not perfect either. However, what we try to show is that we are. We look at the apple in the mirror, and that's that image we try to put out into the world, right? Whether it's talking to people or how our house looks or what we put on our social media pages. We don't tend to put the unedited versions of ourselves out there. We don't necessarily say the mistakes we made. We try to maybe cover up what we did wrong. And so we don't necessarily see the chunks that are bitten out of our apple or the bruises that are on that. The other part is we do tend to compare ourselves with other people. Now, if we go back to the apple over here and know that everyone puts out an edited version of themselves, we're comparing our real and authentic self with someone else's edited version. And we're never going to add up, right? So when we look at the ice cream bars and the cookie, that poor cookie saying, oh, these ice cream bars are so much cooler than me. Well, the cookie's comparing himself or themselves to things that it can't be. And when you want ice cream's the only thing you're going to want. But when you want a hot, warm cookie fresh from the oven, there's nothing like it. So trying to make the cookie ice cream, not necessarily going to work. It's very similar to when we try to be someone we're not. That's going to be hard, and it's not necessarily going to work. So how do we do this? We have the beautiful compassionate action steps. And what these are is we want to notice. We want to be present in the moment, notice what's going on, notice what is starting to happen. Do a self-check. Be aware of our initial thoughts and feelings. Not to rush to judgment, but think about, okay, how am I feeling about this? What's my gut say? What's my heart saying? And then seek to understand. So rather than judgment, listen for feelings and strengths from that other person or from the situation you're in. We roll down and we cultivate empathy. Once we start to understand another side of a story, we start to really develop some genuine concern based on our connection to the situation or that person. And then we can decide, okay, what's the best action here? I can maybe talk to the person who I'm working with or with myself in the situation that I'm in, and then actually take that action. Okay, but how do we do this? I mean, that sounds so nice and it sounds like this flows so well, and in real life it probably won't. So I'd like you to think of a value that you have. What is a value that really describes who you are, that core value? And if I said you only have one, what core value would you say this value sums up who I really am? Not necessarily who we want to be or comparing ourselves to our neighbors or friends, but who are we? There's a couple examples on the screen, and there's a lot more values than are written on the screen. What is the value that you emulate? Some folks find family and love as their main core value. Some folks say harmony or belonging. Some folks look for connection. Some people like adventure or loyalty. Most of the time, I usually go with connection. And the reason I do connection is because I want to really connect with the people that I'm talking to or working with. And the important part now with the value that you picked and that I picked is, how do we live that? What are those things we do or say yes to that we want to make sure we do so we are living our value? So for me, picking connection, one of the things that I really try to do in my workplace is figure out, okay, how can folks really understand what I'm trying to teach or educate or facilitate? When I get home from work, I really have to be mindful with shutting down my computer, trying to transition so I can spend time and connect with my family without thinking back to work. Sometimes, frankly, it's putting down my phone and actually listening to the stories that people are saying and telling. So that connection for me looks like that. And then there's ways then when I'm saying, yes, family, I'm going to spend time with you, I have to say no to other things. Maybe nighttime meetings, maybe even nighttime fun things that, hey, this would be neat, and I want to connect with my family. So when you really know that value that you have, you can really determine these are the things I want to say yes to. And if I'm saying yes to these things, might help us have better boundaries to say no to those things that don't match our value. Now, the other important part of having a value and knowing our core value is that it also paints our lens. It really provides our lens of how we live and work through life. And kind of like this rhinoceros is painting all kinds of beautiful pictures of landscapes. And in every single picture, their horn is right there in the center. Now, that rhinoceros has no idea that other animals, people, things that see their picture don't see that horn when they look. So all of us, with what our value is, have a lens on the world that is, oh, this is what I see, and other folks might see it differently. So when we're looking at our value, and if my value is connection and someone else's value might be loyalty, we might have some similarities in how we live our lives, and we might have some differences. And it would be important to really talk about those and to really see, oh, this is why you do this, and this is why I do that. and here's how we mesh, and here's how we really don't. So when we go back then to these action steps and we look at our value, when we notice things, we're probably noticing things more based on how we live in our value rather than that other person. So to know your value really starts helping with being able to be in the moment and recognize things and saying, this is how I see it. So how do I look at how that other person sees it? So these first 4 steps can kind of be a little bit different because we've not been taught or trained most of our lives to notice things. A lot of our life and our brain, frankly, is let's react. And let's react to the negative. Because if we're going to cross a street and we see a car speeding at us, our brain says, no, you don't have time to cross that street. So our brain protects us by looking at the negative. How in the world then do we start to try to look at the positive to even make a connection? Feelings. What I'd like you to just check in with yourself right now, because this is not necessarily something we grew up with either, is noticing how we're feeling right now. So I'd like you to just kind of think about it and not overthink, because then we stop feeling, but feel your gut. For some of you, you go with the gut and you have these gut instincts, and that's important. Some of us, are more from that heart. And some of us are like, nope, I'm all brain. All of those have different feelings. So right now, just in your body, in your spirit, what feeling do you have right now? What's that emotion? And frankly, some of you might be bored because I'm watching a Zoom. Some of you might be, hopeful because maybe this will help me. Some of you are like, I'm so overwhelmed and I'm just trying to get through the day. Some of you are like, I'm satisfied, I'm joyful. All of those. We all have different feelings at all different times. And feelings are fleeting. We have an emotion, it happens, and it generally passes on then. For those of you who are so Midwest that you're like, Heather, no, feelings are a little floofy and I just don't know about this. Let's look at it this way. Feelings are data points for what you need. If you are angry, there's something you probably feel like you need to fight for. If you're sad, what is something you've lost or are grieving? If you're overwhelmed, what is the support you need? Every one of us has various feelings, and for each of our feelings, we have different needs. Those needs might be different than other folks too. A lot of times when I'm overwhelmed, it's really helpful for me to get support from a person by offering an actual thing to do. Instead of saying, oh, hey, can I help you? I'll probably say no. But if they're like, can I bring you dinner tonight? Oh man, that would be lovely. So it's going to be a little bit different for all of us. Now, this is going to be tough. So that feeling that you just said, okay, here's where I'm kind of at. What might be something you need right now? And with that need, are you able to do that yourself? You're going to need someone or some support to do that. And that's going to look different for all of us. And really diving in and practicing this every day. Okay, how am I feeling? What do I need to either maintain that feeling or work through that? Who can help me? It's really going to be helpful. And it's going to take a lot of practice because we have not had this since we were little. What we also can do is look at that other person. All right, I'm feeling this way. I think I need this. How's that other person maybe feeling in this situation? If, for instance, we are a caregiver for someone who has some memory loss, and every day they might ask us 57 times, when's this person coming over? And that person was just there yesterday, and they're not coming over for another week. I might feel frustrated. And what I need is just a break from that question. Thinking of that other person who maybe has memory loss and really is concerned, hey, when's this person coming over? Think of that feeling. What might they be feeling? Are they worried? Are they overwhelmed? Are they missing that person? And what do they need? So it really can help us think of, okay, if I was in that situation, what would I do? So when we go back then, we almost looked at the first 4 action steps just by looking at feelings and needs. We're noticing, oh, okay, here's what's going on. Here's where I'm at with this. Ooh, here's maybe what I need, but now here's that other person. All right, here's maybe what they're feeling. Here's maybe what they're needing. And we go down and be like, okay, all right, they're asking about, this. They're asking about this dinner. They're really wanting to do that. They are, fighting me because they don't want to wear a coat. Where are they coming from? What's their feeling and need? And would I maybe feel the same if I was in that situation too? So we have those first 4 steps, right? Now, we have a broader picture now. Our rhinoceros horn maybe isn't there anymore, or maybe it's smaller, or maybe we see 2 rhinoceros horns. So we have that broader picture. How can we take that empathy and turn it into action? A lot of us can learn and practice empathy and stand in someone else's shoes, walk in someone else's shoes, use someone else's wheelchair, right? If we're really looking at things. And we can kind of think of, okay, this is how it would be like. Instead of then getting stuck there or even falling into sympathy or pity, how do we do action? So empathy to action is really, let's focus on the moment and what is manageable. Okay, you're using a wheelchair and this curb cut is completely full of snow and ice. All right, at this moment, can I get over that snow and ice? Do I need to go around? At this moment, what is manageable? If we look at, maybe someone who's arguing with us about even something as innocuous as what to have for dinner. Okay, this person wants this. I have this stuff to make. It's already defrosted. What is manageable in this moment? We listen. Now, honestly, a lot of us have practiced a lot of our lives in hearing. I hear what you say, and now I'm going to respond to you. Listening really connects to another person's strengths and their feelings and needs. It connects to their values, too. And to look at those as strengths and to keep an open mind for solutions. So, for instance, when I picked my daughter up from school one day, she's a teenager, and she had an awful day, just awful. When she got in the car, you could feel how awful her day was. It's like, you had an awful day, didn't you? And she poured out her heart and soul. I listened. Now, I wasn't going to change her day, wasn't going to change how it went, but honestly, our solution was, let's go have some chili cheese fries, and let's just sit here and talk about how awful this was and kind of get through these feelings and process what that happened and then figure out how to move on. We can focus on the recent past when the challenge was not a barrier. So as we get older, things change, right? We're not maybe necessarily able to read the smallest print that we used to. We might not be able to run or walk as far as we used to. Stairs might be just one bugger, and we just have a harder time doing that. Sometimes things change, and what we used to do, we can't anymore. So when that challenge was not a barrier, how'd you work through it? Or look at, when this started happening and when I needed to change this, here's how I got through that. So looking at, all right, what are those things I enjoy? What are those things that I needed to do to get through this hard situation? When I broke my leg a couple years ago, I had to use crutches, couldn't walk. You couldn't carry a cup of coffee across the room on crutches. I did learn because I was really, really wanting to carry my own coffee. However, I also needed to learn to ask for help. Because when you have crutches, carrying a cup of coffee or a bowl of soup does not work well. And so I really had to learn how to ask for help. So focusing on that, saying, all right, sometimes I need to practice asking for help. And that's the barrier rather than my broken leg. Also, changing perspective and focusing on the desire to change. For instance, hey, there's eggshell in the cake. At least it's not a hair, right? Reframing can sometimes really help us. Oh, it's snowing out today, or it's so cold and I can't go out. It's this and that. All right, well, I get to watch some more shows or do some more cross stitch or work on my woodworking or do whatever that is that I like to do inside. Also focusing on that desire to change. If someone doesn't want to change, it's going to be a harder road. I have a friend who's a physical therapist, and her biggest motto is you can't want it more than your patient. If you are caregiving, if you are working with yourself, and you have a different goal or that person has a goal, does that goal fit what the person wants? Does your goal fit what you want? And looking at that. And then recognizing when we're stuck. We all get stuck. We all get stuck in that spiral of negativity. And what would it take for us to get unstuck? Sometimes it's just sitting there and venting with some negativity, right? Sometimes it's finding a person who's good at fixing and saying, hey, can I bounce some ideas off you? Sometimes it's thinking about, okay, here's where I am. Do I need to walk away and come back? Do I need to just drill this? I play the piano, and I sometimes accompany my kids with their solo ensemble, and sometimes those piano songs are really hard. And there are parts where I look at it and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to play this. And I get stuck in that I'm never going to be able to do this thinking. Couple things that I do. First, modify the song. Do I need to play all the notes? No, I'm the accompanist. Best. Does my kid have to sound good? Yes. How can I change the song to make sure what I play makes him sound good? And the other thing that I can do is, all right, let's just drill these 4 measures. Let's just get it until my fingers can't mess it up again. And frankly, sometimes it's saying, walk away, this isn't going to work, and your attitude's starting to get a little bad, and I need to walk away and take a break and come back in 15 minutes. Now, the other thing when we look at compassion resilience and self-compassion, and when we work with other people, boundaries are going to be important. Now, I will fully admit to you right now that I am a person who needs to practice boundaries more. I often say yes to probably more than I am able to do or can promise. So, the first thing when we set compassionate boundaries is know what we want to say yes to in our lives. So back to that value that you thought of at the beginning. If your value's love, what do you want to say yes to? If your value's family, what do you say yes to? If it's respect or honesty or loyalty, what do you say yes to? Because when you make that list of here's my things that I want to say yes to, what do you have to say no to now? The second step is to be proactive. If we are working with people and we know humans are hard, and so looking at proactive is, okay, as we go through this journey, and maybe it's caregiving, maybe it's a job, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's, figuring out, hey, here's my boundaries, here's what I can and cannot do. Having some meetings to discuss that. Hey, here's what I'm willing to give and do. Here's what I can do. Here's what you can do. Here's what we both can't do or won't do. And how can we work through some of that? And then within that, number 3, just say it. Because, my mom used to say, I don't have ESP. I don't know what you're thinking, which is so true, right? And we often think that people should just know what we need and do it for us. And honestly, it never works. It never works. People don't tend to guess what we need unless we tell them. And so using that very simple language, saying, you know what, I need a break. Can I please have 10 minutes alone? Is going to be kind. It might feel mean, especially if we've always done everything for everyone else before. But telling a person, I need this, is a really important way to practice boundaries. Number 4 is reinforcing by pointing out violations in the moment. So if you are on that 10-minute break and that person comes to you and says, hey, like, I still have 5 minutes. I will talk to you in 5 minutes. Thank you. Is going to be probably better than us going, doing a thing, getting irritated like grumpy cat, and then maybe falling into some passive aggressive behavior. Because we sometimes do that too, right? I'll do the dishes, but I'm going to do the dishes as loud as I can to try to let you know I'm not happy. Well, if we say I'm not happy and say it in the moment, probably going to be more effective than angry dishwashing. And then give explanations, number 5, that are specific to the other person and offer shared solutions. So if you say, I need a break, I need some quiet time. For instance, when I tell you that, I just need to go into the bedroom. If you could go into the kitchen. Really explaining specifically, hey, I need some time. I just got home. I need to just process and transition into being home now. And then back up your boundary with action as number 6. If we give in, we invite people to ignore our needs, right? Think about if we are a parent or, an adult, and if we know toddlers, those toddlers don't give up, right? Teenagers don't give up. People in our lives, when they know we've always done this, will keep trying to get what they want until we give in. And when we do, then they're going to ignore all of those things that we set up with boundaries. So, looking back at our compassionate action steps, we have our feelings and needs, and we're really trying to connect with ourselves and that person. We're looking at that empathy into action, and what can we do and how do we do it? And then we actually take that action. Now, frankly, this is not going to be easy. It's going to be something we need to practice because we have always in our lives, a lot of times anyway, learned to be critical, learned to try to improve, learned to, just come on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, fine. And while maybe those things work sometimes, it's also going to be harder to work through things with folks and develop something that works better for both of you or all of you or even just yourself when we do this. So just think about what's still circling in your mind from today's session. Think about maybe what can I do to learn and live my value? What can I do to practice my feelings or my needs? What might I do to develop some boundaries where maybe I haven't had them before? In our live session, we talked about the difference between being kind and being nice, where being nice is to just look like that good person.
Thank you for listening today. Thank you, Doc, for such a great reminder about compassion fatigue. I hope you enjoyed it this week. I'll see you next week.